Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spin It Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about the new album from I Fight Dragons, called The Near Future. So as the year is winding down and list season is fast approaching, and I promise I'll get to that by the end of the year, I'm pretty much binge listening to a ton of albums I missed the chance to cover over the course of 2014. However, one album I did want to talk about, especially given no other music reviewer has talked about this album yet, is the new one from Chicago rock act I Fight Dragons. I first heard about them earlier this year when I was looking through the 2014 Warped Tour lineup, where they were easily one of my favorite new finds on that whole lineup, which was helped by just how great they were when I ended up seeing them that summer on Warped. If you're curious, click the link here or in the description to check out my recap of that whole day. Anyway, my description of I Fight Dragons is inevitably going to be similar to how I described them in that video, but to put it more in terms of the end of 2014, if you were blown away by Weezer's awesome comeback album and want more of that, and you're also waiting on bated breath for both the next Anamanaguchi album and the next Star Wars movie, then The Near Future and I Fight Dragons in general is pretty much perfect for you. Musically, they just have this really distinct way of mixing crunchy hard rock guitars with booming production and surprisingly intricate guitar solos, instantly hooky power pop melodies, and those chiptune synths that add a real cool flavor to the mix that not a lot of bands in this style can claim to have. It was all put on full display from the first songs I heard from them, those being the singles from their 2011 debut, Kaboom, namely Save World, Get Girl, Crazies, and Geeks Will Inherit the Earth. Now, as you can tell from the titles of pretty much everything involved, they don't exactly take themselves too seriously, and they have a generally nerdy sci-fi aesthetic to them that adds a lot of likable charm to a band's sound already chock full of that. Which leads their sophomore album, The Near Future, which was initially slated to be released in September, but in a tragically convenient twist of fate, ended up being pushed back months to December due to pressing problems, and it makes this review generally more timely. Plus, it's worth mentioning that this album was actually crowdfunded on Kickstarter, and ended up going way past its initial $20,000 goal. So with all background info out of the way, let's get right into this album. So The Near Future is basically divided into two parts within its 41-minute, 15-track runtime. But where this album really comes through conceptually in a cool way is that there are basically two ways you can listen to the first part of this, aka the first 10 tracks all labeled with The Near Future, the Roman numeral, and then the song title. The first is pretty much how you listen to any other album. A bunch of great I Fight Dragons tracks with the traits I described earlier, but with a noticeable amount of interludes and instrumental tracks between each more conventional track with vocals. They add a good amount of variety and keep it from getting too one note, and are actually all pretty memorable in their own right. But the second, and probably the most interesting, is when you read along the liner notes, where it's shown these first 10 tracks are essentially a mini sci-fi rock opera. The tracks' vocals are basically the main characters' inner monologues throughout, while the other tracks are meant to be listened to while you read along with each respective part of the story for the narration story building, and these little instrumental tracks all set the scenes musically very well. Without spoiling too much, the story follows an unnamed 18-year-old protagonist, referred to as the Boy, as he's going through various personal struggles and winds up running into an alien girl, discovering her powers, and going on a quest with her to save her grandfather from a mysterious evil corporation. In fact, mysterious is a good way to describe the story in general, mostly because it's just 20 minutes out of the album's runtime. It's not exactly fleshed out beyond some awesome visual aid in the liner notes, and it does kind of make me wonder what would happen if this was fleshed out to the length of the entire album. Would it add more character development and world building, or would it just turn this whole thing into a bloated mess? Now, looking at the bigger picture, on paper, this does seem like a cool idea, but one that could potentially alienate those that just want a great rock, chiptune, power pop, pop punk, whatever you want to call it, hybrid album, without the need for any more research. I mean, why make them read from a whole different medium entirely in order to enjoy it, or else just get fragments of a story? That doesn't seem very fair. But then at one point, I realized the real brilliance of this album, namely that these songs with vocals lyrically work incredibly well, both in and out of context of the album, sometimes for entirely different reasons. Like I said, these songs are meant to be what the boy is thinking at certain points in the story, while dealing with these genuine young adult issues that, as an 18-year-old myself, I find myself really relating to at points. And here's the thing. All these ideas are conveyed within these songs, while pretty much everything exclusively applying to the story is told through that ad material, meaning that these songs can be very effective and relatable lyrically, even if you never even went into that art stuff. Case in point, the song Another Week. Now, in the story, the song is about the boy trying desperately to find this alien girl after meeting her, but it can also function just as well as a song about your dreams eluding you and basically feeling your life wasting away as time spent not pursuing your passions. It really is the perfect way to go about a concept album like this, since it effectively makes these sci-fi elements only a huge part of it for those that want it to be, so it doesn't get distracting or corny on the surface level listen. But like I said, that's only the first half of this album. The last 5 tracks are completely unrelated, as you can see from the lack of the near future title labels, and despite all the praise I gave the first half of this album, these are some of the best standalone tracks on this whole thing. It's very clear they didn't just tack these things on because they didn't have enough ideas for the concept album. No Strings is the kind of snarling, justifiably cocky kiss-off anthem to manipulative people that characterize some of the best songs on the last Bayside album, both musically and lyrically. Pretend has an awesomely funky bass line and some of the best chiptune synth work on this whole thing, and Chicago is a charmingly earnest ode to their hometown. And the epic 7-minute closer Jimmy and Sally is easily the second most ambitious thing about this album, using those titular characters to relate back to that first half's theme of identity and trying to find your place in the world with what you want to do with your life, and it works really well. I gotta be honest with you guys, going into this album in review, I didn't expect to be talking about anything other than the infectious melodies, the Weezer resemblance, the cool electronic work, and a cute little sci-fi story, but the way it all ties together just worked in a fantastic way for me. And this is saying something coming from someone that's not exactly a hardcore nerd when it comes to more sci-fi related stuff. Really, any issues I have are nitpicks. As earnest as it does sound, the song Always is a little too cliche for me as far as romantic ballads go, and I would have liked 1 or 2 more songs for the first half to kind of flesh out the story more, maybe push this album to around 50 minutes or so. But again, this is still a great album, and it gets a very strong 8.5 for me. So if you guys have heard this album, what do you think about it? Do you agree with what I had to say? Disagree? Have any feedback about the channel in general? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, just as a little thing to subscribers, this is going to be technically my last conventional album review of the year. After this is going to be Underground Corner, and then Lists Aplenty. Now, for those of you that are just coming across this channel for the first time, and just want a little rundown of what I've done this year, what I'd recommend is subscribing and then waiting for those lists, since this is a good opportunity to do that without going through the entire channel's archive. So, share this around with anyone who might be interested, like the Facebook page in the description for updates and commentaries, music news, and hopefully I'll see you in the next episode of Spin It Reviews.